right? And they would usually say something like, I'd rather have been robbed or lied to or something like that than have people talk about me behind my back, right? One of the things that we have that's important to us is our honor and our reputation. More so than the things we own, the clothes we wear, one thing that we hold truly sacred, and therefore is sacred in Islam, is our honor and our reputation. And this is why the Sharia, the religion of Islam, goes through great lengths to protect the honor of people. And from amongst that is holding us accountable for the things we say. Right? And this is why Allah Azza wa Jalla told us, مَا يَلْفِظُ مِنْ قَوْلٍ إِلَّا لَدَيْهِ رَقِيبٌ عَتِيدٌ. That we don't speak a single word except that it is being written down by the angels. Why is it being written down? Does anyone know? What's the purpose of these things being written down? What we say? You can raise your hand.
So we can be accountable for them?
So we can be held accountable for them. Right? So everything we say, we're going to be held accountable for. And this is why Allah Jalla wa Ala, when speaking about backbiting, He likens it, or He gives us a very visual image. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, أَيُحِبُّ أَحَدُكُمْ أَنْ يَأْكُلَ لَحْمَ أَخِيهِ مَيْتًا فَكَرِهْتُمُوهُ. That would any of you like to eat the dead flesh of their brother? Right? This is a very vivid image, right? We can see it. The reason why Allah made it so visual for us, that we can see something, it seems disgusting to us, right? Like eating the dead, even eating like dead flesh, for example, what is known as mayta in Islam, is haram for us, even of animals, right? We can't eat an animal which hasn't been slaughtered properly. But imagine eating the dead flesh of your brother or your sister. Allah Azza wa Jalla said, فَكَرِهْتُمُوهُ, that you would hate that action. You would hate to eat the dead flesh of another Muslim. So Allah Azza wa Jalla is saying, just like you would hate to eat the dead flesh of another human being, so should you hate to backbite somebody else. Right? And that is why Allah Azza wa Jalla gives that analogy. So one of the things I wanted to do was talk about why some of the sins of the tongue happen in the first place. So what leads people to gossip or backbite or be loose with their tongue when it comes to others? One of the reasons is not understanding what the sins of the tongue actually are, right? So if somebody talks about somebody else and you tell them, listen brother, don't say that, that's backbiting, they'll be like, I don't care, I'll say it to his face, right? And the reality is, whether you can say it to his face or not, doesn't change the fact that it's still backbiting. Or you'll hear somebody say, I'm not lying, I'm not saying something which isn't true, right? This person did this. Does that change the fact that you're still sinful for backbiting? No, it doesn't. And the way we understand that is we go back to the hadith of the Prophet, where he asked the companions, he said, أَتَدْرُونَ مَا الْغِيبَةِ? He said, do you know what ghiba is? Backbiting. And the companion said, Allah and His Messenger know best. The Prophet said, ذِكْرُكَ أَخَاكَ بِمَا يَكْرَهُ. He said, it is to say something about your brother that they dislike. That is the definition. And then one of the companions, he asked Prophet, he said, what if what we're saying is true? Like they have however we're describing them, or whatever we're saying about them, is actually true. The Prophet said, if what you're saying about them is true, then you have backbit that person. And if what you're saying about them is not true, then you have done what? Does anyone know? You have slandered that person. And they're both major sins, right? So it isn't a matter of whether it's true or not, right? The only thing that we need to look at as Muslims is, would this person like for us to say this about them or not? That's the only thing, that's the only criteria. So it doesn't matter whether it's true. It doesn't matter if it's, it's not that bad. I'm not saying anything that bad about them, right? It's not that bad. It's fine. Even some of the scholars say that you can describe a person and backbite them. Simply describing a person. So you can say about someone, the fat guy, the fat brother, that guy. And if he wouldn't like for you to say that about him, you fall into backbiting. It doesn't matter whether it's true or not. Or you could say, you know that sister who always wears tight clothes and doesn't dress modestly? That sister. Right? It doesn't matter whether she does that or not. That makes no difference in whether this is considered backbiting or not. The only thing that matters is, would this person like for us to say this about them or not? Imam Hassan al-Basri rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that when you talk about someone in a negative way, you fall into one of three sins. He says, either you say something about them which is true, right? So if you're talking about somebody in a negative way, either you say something about them which is true, he said, then you have fallen into ghiba, backbiting. He says, or you say something about them which isn't true, and then you fall into slander. He says, or you say something about them which you don't know if it's true or not true. Meaning you heard something and you passed it on. So you heard something about someone, you didn't confirm whether it's true or not, you just passed on that information. He said that is ifk, rumor mongering. And all three of these actions are major sins in Islam. The second reason why people tend to fall into sins of the tongue is a thirst for revenge. So somebody will get spoken about. So for example, somebody comes to me and they say, Brother Saad, so-and-so has been saying this about you, right? And out of my thirst for revenge, I'll be like, really? Well, let me tell you about this guy. Who is he to speak about me? And then I'll go and backbite that person or slander that person, right? And this is actually really, there's a lot of irony in this situation, right? So when we backbite someone out of revenge, there's a lot of irony in that. The reason is because the Prophet ﷺ told us, he asked the companions, he said, أَتَدْرُونَ مَنِ الْمُفْلِسِ? He said, do you know who is considered bankrupt? And the companions, one of the companions, he said, well, the bankrupt person is the one who doesn't have any wealth or doesn't have any property, right? That's who's considered bankrupt in our times, right? Somebody doesn't have any wealth or property. That's who's considered bankrupt. The Prophet ﷺ said that the bankrupt person who comes on the Day of Judgment with their fasting and their charity and their qiyam and their good deeds and this and this and this, all this good that they did, but they show up on the Day of Judgment and they had harmed this person in their life. They had spoken about this person. They had slandered that person. They had spread rumors about this person. And then because of that, all their good deeds are taken and given to the person that they had harmed. And when their good deeds are finished, then the bad deeds of the person that they spoke about or they harmed are taken and placed on top of this person. So if we speak about someone, who are we really harming? We're harming ourselves. And that's the irony of speaking bad about someone because we feel wrong. The same Imam that I told you about, Imam Hassan al-Basri, who told us about the three categories of talking about people. In his time, a man, he was a scholar of Islam, a man came to his door and he said to him, "Oh Imam, so-and-so has been talking bad about you." Now first of all, the Imam got very upset. He said to him, "Hasn't Shaitan found a messenger other than you?" Meaning this is the work of Shaitan to come tell people what others are saying about them, etc., etc. And then he says, "Get out of here, like leave my house." Then the Imam, Hassan al-Basri, he goes to the house of the person who was backbiting him. He knocks on his door, and this guy opens the door. And first of all, he's surprised to see the Imam. And he's like, because he knows he's been talking bad about him. He's like, what is the Imam doing at my doorstep? The Imam says to him, he says, "I have brought you a plate of dates." He had a plate of dates in his hand. He said, "I wanted to repay you for the favor you have done for me. My only regret is that I cannot pay you with that which you have paid me." What is he speaking about here?
Deeds.
His deeds, right? He's saying, "Jazakallah khair for giving me your good deeds," right? And here's a plate of dates. Here's my thanks to you. But don't think that I am going to stoop to that level and give you my good deeds, right? So that's why I say that's the irony of actually talking bad about someone out of revenge. Number three, the third reason, is peer pressure. Now, when most people hear the words peer pressure, they tend to think of like middle school and high school and stuff, right? Am I right? Yeah? So as adults, we feel like, yeah, I don't get affected by peer pressure. Like I'm my own person. But I tell you that when it comes to talking about other people, we often are the victim of peer pressure. And I don't even know if victim is the right word, but we often are in that situation where there's peer pressure. And let me give you an example of that. You're sitting in a gathering, or someone, let's say, sitting in a gathering, and another person gets brought up, and people start talking about him or her, and say, you know, this person's messed up, they did this to me, or they did that to me, and can you believe this person, he's such a hypocrite, or whatever. They're talking bad about him. And everyone joins in. Now they're all talking bad about this person. Like, can you believe this person, they did this or that? Now, the person who may not even know this person, or has never experienced anything bad from them, may join in on the conversation simply to be part of what's going on. Simply not to feel left out. Now, I mentioned this to someone and they're like, no, that's not true, that doesn't happen. Do you think that happens? Have you ever been in a situation that happens? Just a quick show of hands.